You are listening to the Ready PDM Network.
Are you ready?
Hello, Ready Product Radio heads, and welcome to another exciting episode of Ready Product Radio. We're back for Season 2, and this is Episode 36. This week, we talk with veteran technology product marketer and blogger at onproductmanagement.net, Saeed Khan. In this episode, Saeed talks about how to optimize product marketing and the nail it, then scale it approach to product lifecycle management. Ready Product Principle number 28 is borrowed from Peter F. Drucker. Because the purpose of business is to create a customer, the business enterprise has two and only two basic functions, marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest are costs. Marketing is the distinguishing, unique function of the business. Enjoy the show. Saeed Khan, welcome to Ready Product Radio.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. As you may know, Saeed, Ready Product Radio is all about helping people be ready for the many challenges they'll face in their product journeys. And I understand today we're going to talk about product marketing and how to optimize product marketing. And that's definitely a common challenge that a lot of product people are going to face. Saeed, you and I go way back in the Toronto area, but for folks who may not know you, do you mind if we start with you just giving an introduction of yourself, talk about your day job, so to speak, and how long you've been in product and your passion areas, if you will?
Sure. Thanks. We've known each other for a long time here in Toronto. I've worked in Toronto for a long time. I started my project management career here about 20 years ago. And in the interim, I lived in the Bay Area for about 6 years, working in the heart of Silicon Valley. Came back to Canada about 10 years ago and have been working here since. So about 20 years in product management, product marketing, and then prior to that, I did some development and some consulting and some other things.
Nice. So today we're going to talk about how to optimize product marketing. And I know that this is a passion area for you. I've seen you present on this topic at a couple of product camps and whatnot. So let's introduce our topic. We've got it broken down into 4 subtopics, defining, the goals of product marketing, how to organize and staff it with the right people, and then thirdly, how to have a clear strategy and execute on the required activities, and then fourth, how to track, measure, and optimize it. Is that a good structure to go through the topic?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So, Saeed, why don't we start with the first piece? How do we define product marketing and understand the goals of product marketing in your perspective?
Yeah, so this is interesting. Let me divert for a second. When
Sure.
people talk about product management, there's always a debate on exactly what it is and where it should focus. And if you ask 20 product managers what product management is, you'll probably get about 19 different answers. A couple of people might agree. I think with product marketing, it's something similar, although different. So when people think about product management, the focus is on product and, very heavily on product, working with engineering and requirements, this and that. But when people talk about product marketing, it seems that the focus tends to be on the marketing. And you see this in a lot of companies where product marketing is under the marketing organization, right? And they're not close to product. They don't, a lot of times they don't understand the product well or haven't used the product or whatnot. And I think that's a problem because, in the olden days, there was just marketing.
Yep.
And marketing
Marcom.
had a broad, marketing had Marcom, but it had, what you'd call strategic marketing. It had other things, corporate marketing, et cetera, right? And there was a kind of a well-understood definition of what marketing did in general. And then about, maybe 20 years ago, roughly speaking, the concept of product marketing seemed to started to emerge, but it was never clearly defined. So I think for me, it always starts at first principles. If you're going to do something, understand what it is, and then it makes it much easier to implement. So I look at product marketing as a part of what used to be overall marketing. And the way I define it is that product marketing is strategic marketing at the product or product line level. And its real focus is understanding the buying process, right? Now, you have to really think about that and sort of, interpret what that means. So first of all, there has to be a focus on product. I mean, A lot of times people who are product marketers tend to be just general marketers. Maybe they're product focused, but they're general marketers first. But really it has to be, you have to understand the product, you have to understand the buyer. So there's a marketing understanding, but it's really focused on the buyer and the buying process. And then what I say is strategic marketing, meaning that you really want to stay above the weeds. You do have to get in the weeds at certain times, but you don't want to be just focused on creating collateral, which unfortunately also a lot of product marketers end up doing. And they're creating collateral, attending trade shows, executing marketing programs, but they really aren't spending enough time at the sort of higher value things. So that's the way I look at product marketing.
Yeah, no, that's good, because when I came into it, for a long time with technology companies, marketing was, like you said, Marcom, and then the strategic side, but product marketing's like you say, different. That's a good definition. Let's talk about the goals then of product marketing, Saeed. So you're saying it's all about the buying process. So what are some of the goals that you tend to suggest people use to kind of drive or focus their product marketing efforts?
So one of the things, again, just going back to that buying,
sure,
because I want to use that as a basis to getting the goals.
Okay, cool.
People need to understand it's, product marketing is also cross-functional. So similar to product management, there's not a lot of argument that product management is cross-functional.
Right.
Product marketing is also cross-functional. And in fact, I see product management and product marketing as kind of two sides of the same coin. They both have common goals. They both work together across the company, but their focus might be slightly different. So in general, I think the goals of both product management and product marketing is product success. How do you measure yourself? Is the product successful in the ways that we define success, right? And that could be different in different companies. It could be different at different stages of product life cycle. In the early stages, it might simply be awareness and customer acquisition. You're not really looking at revenues, whereas later on, you're definitely looking at revenue and profitability and things like that. So again, understanding that it's cross-functional, and then looking at it through a focus on defined product success and achieving the goals there.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So to your point then, in terms of goals, are you potentially suggesting that product management and product marketing probably start at least at the root or the trunk of the tree with the same goals, and then maybe like you say, their focus of their activities might be different, but they might share goals with product management? Is that kind of where you're headed with that?
Yeah, I think they should have common goals, right? So, and those goals are generally business goals. So if I'm a product manager and my focus is on, getting the right product out and having a successful product, my product marketing counterparts should have the same objectives, right? We should be working together, and vice versa. If I'm a product marketer and I'm really striving to get awareness and sort of an understanding of the product in the market, my product management counterparts should understand that, and what they're doing, aligned with that. And I think when those two things happen, that the two groups work together, you see a lot of success. When those things diverge, then you're really creating friction in the company. Like, why would the two big product groups, responsible product success, not be aligned with each other?
Yeah, and just on that point, Saeed, one of the things I wanted to qualify as well as part of our introduction here, you said those two big groups, and that reminded me. So what do you see in your experience, a difference in this idea of product marketing depending on company size and maturity? In other words, I know when I started out in some smaller companies, especially, the product manager was the product marketer. But I imagine in larger organizations, there's enough to do that there's multiple roles. Like you say, it's all product management. So what, the way you talk about product marketing, is it best suited or best aligned with organizations of a certain scale or size, or?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question, Alan.
Yeah, it is.
I was actually kind of thinking that as I was saying those sentences about those groups,
Okay.
because in the smallest companies, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in sort of the pure startup where there's just a couple of founders and a few employees, and we're talking about technology companies mostly.
Yep. Yep.
There won't even be a product manager. One of the
Yeah.
founders will be effectively doing product management.
That's right.
But at some point, when the company grows, somebody will realize, hey, this is getting to be a lot of work, and we need to figure out how to scale, and let's hire a product manager.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, they hire the product manager for the right reasons, because oftentimes, someone says, I don't want to deal with all this detail. I'm going to hire someone and have them deal with the detail.
Exactly. Write everything up.
And so, their view of what their product manager does is
Take the
really,
notes.
really granular and not really anything that a lot of product managers consider product management. But generally the product manager is hired first, and so then the product manager, though, often is doing the product marketing stuff. Like they'll talk about and they'll maybe develop positioning and messaging, or they'll do the competitive analysis and so on. Maybe there's a marketing group who are working on launch plans or something like that. Don't know always who does sales enablement and things like that, but obviously product management should be part of that. But a lot of those things are covered by product management, and they might even grow product management to a few product managers before kind of carving off a true product marketing function. So product marketing generally comes later. And so you might have a number of product managers in a company that might, let's say the company's at 100 people or something. I don't know what the right size is, but let's say it's about 100 people. You might have a couple of product managers, and somebody says, look, we need to scale better, and we need to find someone who can specialize on the buyer side of things and get that organization growing. So you see that, and I think that kind of ratio tends to continue into larger companies. In most companies I worked in, the product management group was larger than the product marketing group, maybe by a factor of about 1.5 to 2 times the size. I think that, I've spent most of my career in product management, and you often hear product managers complain about, lack of resources or lack of respect and things like that. But if you're on the product marketing side, you're probably looking at product management going, hey, why are you guys complaining? we got half the stuff you guys have.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
So it is. I think it is a challenge. I think product marketing is probably even more understaffed than product management in most companies.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out there, and then the second question I have for you in terms of the goals, I wanted to give you a plug here because I thought you did a great job. So I recently heard you interviewed on the Everyday Innovator podcast with Chad McAllister, and great job on that, by the way. I really enjoyed listening to that.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, so recommend folks listen to that. But anyways, you talked about the nail it, scale it, milk it, and retire it or something like that framework there. But my question to you is, what about product life cycle, and the goals of product marketing? I know in product management, which is where I've spent most of my career, the goals are different depending on the phase of the product life cycle. Is it the same with product marketing or no?
That's a really good question, actually. So that sort of life cycle stages that you're mentioning, it goes build it, nail it, scale it, extend it, milk it, end it. So
okay.
And just to sort of dwell on that for a sec, I've been to a number of conferences and product camps where I've talked about product life cycle, and you might have 100 people in the audience, and I always ask them, I put up a chart and I say, okay, who can tell me all the stages of the traditional product life cycle? and it's shocking. It's shocking that out of a group of, let's say, 100 people, not a single person can just name them all. Yeah. And even as a group, it becomes very difficult,
almost embarrassing. Yeah.
And then I found this thing that, like, well, why is that? Like, it's because people don't really, it's not meaningful to people.
Yeah.
Those kind of generic textbook stages. And so that's where this build it, scale it kind of model came up, because it's really more important to understand what are the objectives of each stage, because that's something we focus on. So that's that thing. And Alan, I'll tell you, if you repeat that 3 times, you'll never forget it afterwards.
Yeah, well, I think I'll need more than 3, but yeah. So let's go through it. So I'm going to try it one more time. So we said build it, nail it, scale it,
extend it, milk it, end it.
Okay. I think it was the extend and end that I missed. But okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, so product marketing goals, are they different depending on where I am on that arc, or?
So let's go back to what I said earlier about product success, right? So the goals of product marketing and product management, but product marketing in this case is product success, right? And those should be defined. So when you're at any stage, you should have a clear understanding of what you're trying to achieve, and then what activities need to be done in order to achieve those goals. And so yes, I would say they would definitely change over the life cycle, because your goals are changing over life cycle. So in the early stages, right? So build it, right? So build it is really this very, very early stage. It's where the whole lean startup kind of methodology focus on, which is really, understanding and who your initial customers will be and what problems you're going to solve. There's obviously, from a product perspective, there's real focus on what you're building. But from a pure product marketing perspective, it's really understanding who those initial buyers are, right? What are their needs, and what is it that you need to communicate and deliver to them so that they can take advantage of what you're offering. So that's a pretty constant thing throughout the life cycle, but in the early stages, that's pretty much where your focus is, right? You're not going beyond that, because you're really, first of all, you're probably resource strapped anyway, whether you have a dedicated product marketing person or not. But secondly, there's only so much capacity you have. The nail it stage, really what that talks about is really getting crisp and clear on what you've built. So you've built something in the first stage to target a specific use case or a small number of use cases and some target audience. It's probably rough. It's not really, pristine. But by the second stage, you really want to get that going. And it's not just about product, by the way. Like when you want to nail something from a business perspective, it means your product is right for that target group, but the rest of your company, how you go to market is going to be right. So what you're saying to the market is right. So that's where product marketing really, really, really needs to be on board and doing what they're doing, because you want to have crisp messaging, nail your messaging, nail your competitive analysis, nail your go-to-market, get your salespeople ready, etc., so that what you're doing there, you're doing it right, even if it's in a small scale, right? Maybe you're only looking at customer acquisition for a local, sort of audience. You don't have the ability to deliver to other countries or whatnot, but you really want to get that right, because the next stage, when you scale, scale means scale your business. Right? So I've got this use case right. I've got my audience and my target market segments all understood. I've got everything working. Now I want to scale. So what I'm doing is I'm growing my business. So I might be growing geographically. I might be going out and just focusing more on customer acquisition and growing it out. And the thing is that if you don't nail it, which means you don't get things right, you're not working efficiently. When you scale, then all those inefficiencies will grow. And in fact, they'll probably multiply. And I worked in a kind of like this once, unfortunately, where they went to market way too early. They had sales reps, they had sales consultants, they were going down to Wall Street and making pitches to customers. And it was for naught, because they didn't have the product ready that those target customers wanted. And so, you end up expending a lot of energy if you try and scale on nothing. Right. Because you don't have anything to deliver. So you didn't have it before. Maybe you thought you did, but you definitely don't do it now. So anyway, so from that perspective, when you were talking about product marketing, you really need to think about what's required there. So if I'm going to scale my business, I need to grow my customers. You want to be able to, for example, have influencers and other people who are going to help you scale. So let's take a typical sort of enterprise software product. Once you get to that scale stage, your buyers are going to become, much more sort of scrutinizing about you. When you were a smaller company, you could work very closely. You could, handhold people. Once you start scaling, you can't give that kind of attention. So, as an example, working with analysts or working with other influencers, whether it's, from a media perspective or journalists or other people like that, you really want to get those kinds of activities going. And product marketing is the obvious group to handle all that kind of stuff. Extend it is a totally different stage. It means extending the product, extending the company out. So, for example, you built your product, you scale it up for those limited use cases. Now you want to go into some new markets or new use cases. And I'll use the example I gave on Chad's podcast, which is that VMware is, I think, a great example of a company that went through that process. So when they first started, server virtualization was not really well understood. The technology was still a bit, raw. It may not have been perfect, but it still had huge value. And their initial target market was people, who need to configure multiple environments for their various QA activities. And virtualizing those environments was great because then they, companies could save on hardware and so on, right? Because configuring hardware was obviously a big expense and time sink. Point, and they did quite well in that market. You had to go beyond that, and once their technology was proven in the QA labs, people were less hesitant to put it onto the production servers because initially no one's going to take this technology that's unproven, put into production.
Exactly.
And so that's that. Then VMware basically went and extended their business into this whole production workload management area, which is huge, right? I mean, it's what exploded the company. And so that's the kind of example of extended, right? Where you say, look, we're taking our same technology. They didn't have to redo their technology. They didn't have to change it. They took and applied it to a different market, a different use case, different set of problems. And so, it's almost like the way I think of it, it's almost like launching a new set of products, right? So you have to position them properly, you have to message them properly, you have to understand who those buyers are, because those are very different than your QA. You have to understand that buying process, which again would be different, et cetera. So absolutely, like once you get to, the scale and the extend, product marketing, without question, I mean, I don't think anyone would argue with it, but without question becomes one of the most critical groups to do that successfully. Now, the thing is, I say to do it successfully because a lot of times companies try and do it, and they do it unsuccessfully. and
sure.
we can probably think of examples of that where companies tried to go into a new market and failed utterly.
Yeah. So extend it. Then it sounds like the product marketing goals would be basically getting to those influencers because you're in a larger market, making sure that the new use cases and the new customers and their buying process is well understood. Are those some of the goals at the scale-up phase?
Extend, yeah. Well,
extend. Scale and extend. Yeah.
Extend, yeah. I mean, I think they're similar. I think though the distinction being that when you get to extend, and extend, and another example of extend could simply be you're extending into new geographies, right? So let's say you built and scaled in North America, and now you want to move to Europe and Asia Pacific or something like that.
Brought to you by Eigenworks. Most companies don't know why they lose deals, and few know why they win. Eigenworks can tell you why. With the buyer as a hero approach, Eigenworks gets deep insight to the reasons organizations make buying decisions. These product, promotion, and sales insights provide clients of Eigenworks with a significant competitive position in their marketplaces.
So, product success in Europe, let's say, or product success in Asia, yes, it'll have some similarities to that in North America, but there are clear differences. There could be, obviously, there's language and geographic differences. There are legal and regulatory differences. How people buy in Europe, as an example, or Asia is very different than in North America. In my experience, I've done a lot of work with companies, particularly in Europe. I've done a little bit in Asia, but I'll use Europe as the example. There's a lot more partner-driven business in Europe than there is in North America. And in the companies I worked at historically, we've just had a huge focus on partners in Europe as compared to North America. We'll have partners in North America, but not to the extent that we've had to work with partners in Europe. So, your go-to-market has to be different in that kind of situation. And your messaging has to be different too, because maybe your overall messaging is the same, but when you talk to a partner and why they should work with you and your product, you have to keep in mind they're probably already working with maybe some of your competitors.
Exactly.
So it's a battle for mind share with them, as opposed to simply just more of a traditional sales and marketing approach that you might go if you're going directly to a customer.
So typically, when you're extending it, one of the things I hear you saying, Saeed, is your ecosystem gets more complex by definition, and
yes.
Product marketing is really key for that, because that complexity has to be managed, right?
Absolutely.
So that's good. So and then you said the last two phases are milk it and end it. So what are the product the product marketing goals in those that we can talk about, or?
I think it diminishes. Milk it
because you're starting to shut it down. Is that the idea?
Yeah. So milk it is what it's kind of my pun on the cash cow stage that people talk about. Right? Yeah,
exactly.
It's where you're not really investing heavily in the product. You're continuing to sell it. You're probably if it's either a subscription or a business where you have a lot of renewal fees or maintenance fees. You're probably collecting those. And probably making hopefully a lot of money. And so what you want to do is at that point you have to keep track of the market. I mean, markets don't just stay stagnant. So let's say you have a product and it's in that later stage. You're saying milk it. Let's milk it, for example. Let's collect those revenues. You're probably not changing things a lot, but you do want to monitor market. Maybe there's some disruptive or other things that are happening in the market that would require you to change your messaging, right? Now, one example, and this is one that I don't know if it was in the milk it stage, but I remember quite well, is when Oracle bought Siebel. So CRM was pretty mature by that point. And so this is, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago or something like that. It was sort of early 2000s. And that was a huge acquisition. And what I remember very, very sort of clearly is that about a week or two after the acquisition was announced, SAP came out with a completely new marketing campaign to go after the Siebel customer base. And what was surprising was, when I think of SAP, I don't think of them as this really fast-moving, dynamic, agile kind of company. They've been around for a long time. They do what they do, but they're big. They're very, very sort of focused on what they do. Yet 2 weeks, and I think it was 2 weeks. I mean, it was within certainly far less than a month. So 1 to 2 weeks. And I was amazed by that. But that kind of thing is something that clearly, somebody in Oracle was saying, and maybe it came down from the top, I don't know, but that was clearly a product marketing exercise that said, one of our segments, so CRM, is the market is being disrupted, and let's really respond in a way that is focused on those customers, those buyers, and what they're looking for. And SAP was playing up on the fears and things like that people might have had with the acquisition. But I thought those are the kind of things that really you want to look for in that phase, right? You're not worrying about your own issues as much as what's going on out in the market, or changes in the customers or things like that, and then responding to it.
Yeah, and I go back to what you said earlier, Saeed, that it's all about the product marketing goals are really business goals, and because I've managed products in these later stages, and like you say, it's almost more of a defense posture that you're taking, because you're trying to collect revenues without doing a lot of new investment. So that makes a lot of sense.
But just on that point, on that point, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned a defense posture, because certainly that SAP example was a defense posture. But
Yeah.
it can also be the other way around, which is, you may start seeing a shift in the market that indicates new opportunities, right? So,
Hmm.
we talk about these phases linearly, right? So build it, yield, scale it, extend
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
etc. But there's no reason why, for example, in a product that is, let's say, in that, you feel it's in that later milk it stage,
Hmm.
that something could happen in the market that takes you back to extend it.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of a good example right now, but it could be an example where there's a technology shift in the market, and
Hmm.
people say, "Hey, let's adjust that." So, well, here's one example, and it's probably one that people might be able to understand. So, for ages, people were talking about the end of mainframes. I
Hmm.
remember back in the '80s, mainframes and were that's where it was at, and then by the time the year 2000 problem came up, I mean that was sort of the rebirth of mainframes in a way, because people
Hmm.
had kind of forgotten about them, and then suddenly the Y2K problem happened, and people were like, oh, our mainframes aren't retired yet, we got to go invest in them.
Exactly.
And then in the early 2000s, I mean, my experience was there seemed to be kind of a rebirth, and there was a lot of focus on that mainframe data, that people realized, wow, there's a lot of information there. We
Yeah.
can get access to it. How do we really get it out and integrate it, for example, or use it with our other data? Because by that time, they had web data, they had other relational data. I work in the data management space, so this is very familiar to me.
Hmm.
And so when I worked in Silicon Valley, this is something that I saw there, and companies were really focused on bringing all that data into one place, and so suddenly the mainframe became important again. So
Hmm.
companies who are selling, say, mainframe connectivity or mainframe data management capabilities suddenly saw a boost in their revenue, because the importance of the mainframe data, had gone up. So
Right.
that's the kind of thing that could happen, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and in fact, that extended phase could happen multiple times as well. So we talk about them linearly, and they generally are, but there are some little things
Yeah.
that can go back and forth.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. Saeed, I just want to be respectful of your time here. So let's move on to the staffing and organization a piece. So we've talked about product marketing and the different types of goals they might have through the life cycle. So, what do you think is the secret sauce in terms of organizationally getting people in the right roles and pointed in the right direction?
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting thing because of everything we've talked about. The
Yeah.
fact that this is a cross-functional responsibility, the fact that the responsibilities can change over time based on the product and product life cycle. And let's say you have multiple products, you'll have maybe multiple products at different stages. So you need people who have a broad set of skills, right? So oftentimes you see ads or job postings and looking for a rock star or a superhero or something like that, and I always cringe when I see those, simply because it just I think it really defeats the purpose of things. Like you really need people who are going to do what needs to be done and can adapt, right? And if you
Hmm.
say we want Superman, or we want Batman. Well, every superhero has their weaknesses, and
Yep.
you can't just create a bunch of Batmans or a team of Supermans or something, right? I use the example of the Justice League. You have a nice wide variety of people with different skills.
Hmm.
So, and
Yeah, yeah. There's a
together
balance there.
they yes, together they are, it's like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right?
Right.
The other analogy is something like chess,
Hmm.
right? You have a whole variety of pieces, and while a lot of people focus on, let's say, the queen,
Yeah.
all the other pieces, the rooks, the knights, the bishops, etc., even the pawns, all contribute. So
Yeah.
that's really the thing you want to have, and I think just fundamentally, you want to find the right people for the right roles, and have them focus on the right activities. I mean, this is not something specific to product marketing. This is just very basic things what you
Yep.
do when you're hiring people. But people tend to forget that. And I was a long time ago, I was in a meeting with a VC, and they were doing a review of one of their portfolio companies, and they had this chart that they used to track, what the state of each group was. And so they had different columns and chart, and one was sales, one was marketing, one was development, and then they had product marketer and product manager as
Hmm.
two columns. And I was like, wow, so all the other ones are viewed as groups,
Mm-hmm.
and product marketer and product manager.
Let's isolate these other two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was weird. And this was a VC who had invested in the company. And so, you want to think about teams as opposed to individuals.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and,
Good.
and the other thing is, the team should have a breadth of skills, because in the end, you don't want to just clone everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just say, oh, we got a great, person here. Let's just find the exact same person and bring them in and, do that n number of times. One example I love to use, and this is, sort of my Canadian pride sort of showing itself, is that back in I think it was the 1992 Olympics, 1996 Olympics, actually,
Mm-hmm.
in Atlanta, I think it was.
Yep.
I forget. Anyway, it was definitely 1996 Olympics. The 4x100 relay team for Canada won the gold medal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the interesting thing was one of those guys, Donovan Bailey, he won the gold medal on the individual 100 meters. But none of the other three guys were even in the finals of the 100 meters. So, none of them were, in the top 8 sprinters in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the combination of that team
Mm-hmm.
won the gold medal against, the US, which had a very strong team, and Jamaica, which had a very strong team, and I forget who else was running in the race. And the thing was that here was a group of guys. Definitely there was one superhero for sure, but the other guys were good, but they weren't great. And yet the combination and their execution, putting them in the right roles, the guy who started, and then the two in the middle, and Donovan Bailey as the anchor, executed what they need to do when they need to do it, and they won by a good margin. So that's the kind of thing I like to think about, is you don't need superheroes everywhere. You need strong people, but you need to understand where they fit in and how they can do their job really well.
Yeah, no, that's good, and that's obviously born out of your years of experience. So, in terms of organizationally, then, where do you see product marketing typically? And to contrast it with product management, Steve Johnson and Pragmatic always used to talk about where product management should report in the organization. So, where do you see product marketing typically in the organizational hierarchy?
So I'm pretty biased in this case, I'll be honest, and because I think that companies, technology companies in particular, but companies should have a product organization.
Yeah.
The traditional sales, marketing, finance, HR, etc. model doesn't work, because company success comes from product success, and if you're gonna focus on product, why doesn't product have a seat at the executive table, right?
Yep.
You cannot have proxies like engineering or marketing speak for product. So my view is that at the top there should be a chief product officer or some equivalent, and under that comes the product management, the product marketing, and possibly the engineering. It depends on how you want to organize it, but definitely product management, product marketing, and sort of other product centric groups need to have that kind of visibility. So I think product management, I said earlier, and product marketing are two sides of the same coin. I think those groups should be aligned, and they should be all part of the same organization. And that makes it very simple. When I've seen product management, say, report into engineering, or product marketing report into marketing, or even sales, what happens is they become just an adjunct to those groups. So if product marketing is part of marketing, then their focus tends to be on the marketing and not so much on the product ever.
Right.
And people do things like, we'll have a dotted line responsibility to this or that. And, dotted line responsibility is meaningless. I mean,
it's just lip service,
Yeah, you're responsible and accountable to who's giving you your marching orders. End of story. So I think very clearly that should be the case. Now, 10 years ago, I don't even think people used the term chief product officer very much. Whereas now, I think it's pretty common, and there's a very clear understanding that product is key in success, and so you see that more and more. Although I still see companies where product marketing is under marketing or under sales, which I think is just a mistake. I think the worst thing for product marketing is to be reporting into sales, and nothing against salespeople, but product marketing really, if you look at the definition we had earlier, it was strategic marketing at the product level. That's really quite different than what sales needs, right? Sales support is not product marketing specific.
Yeah, definitely. So what's left then? So we've talked about what it is. We've talked about the goals of the different life cycles and organizationally where it fits. So you want to finish up with measurement. Talk about metrics for product marketing.
Sure. So product marketing, like any other group, should be managed in a way that is repeatable and can be traced and you can actually improve, right? So if you look at product marketing from year to year or from company to company even, and you say, how do you make improvements to product marketing? I think you'd be hard pressed to find any kind of consistent answer. People look at very empirical things, maybe the number of analyst meetings they have, or something that really isn't meaningful, quite honestly, if you look at the goals, product success, right? How do you improve your ability to make successful products and bring them to market and take them to market, et cetera, right? Those are the kind of questions. So, there's some basic things. When you think about metrics, and the metrics is always an interesting conversation because, there's very clear sales metrics. I mean, sales is probably one of the most metrics-driven organization in terms of obviously closed deals in the pipeline, stage of the deal, size of the deal, number of deals, all those kinds of things. And marketing has a lot of metrics, although some of the marketing metrics like, tweets and things like that, I think are not really, very useful. But you have, the pipeline and lead generation metrics and things like that. And those are all really useful. But when you get to product marketing, it really falls down. What are those metrics that product marketing can really, be measured against, and what can they impact, right? So it's one thing to say, here's some metrics, but are they metrics you can impact? So can product marketing, for example, impact number of leads generated by marketing? Well, maybe indirectly, but you can't really make it direct. So the way I look at it is I think like this. So if you think product marketing is strategic and really needs to be above the fray, then the metrics you should look at should also be on that level. And so I use the phrase think meta, meaning that the way I look at it is if someone's measuring the number of leads entering the funnel, or at various stages of the funnel, then one thing product marketing can be doing is looking at the velocity of those leads through the funnel. So as an example, sales has a common refrain, and again, nothing against salespeople, but we need more leads, right? This is always the thing. And oftentimes when they get more leads, their response is, these leads are terrible.
Quality. We need quality leads.
Exactly. So we need more quality leads. Let's just use that as a thing.
Exactly.
Well, what does that really mean, right? And how can product marketing impact that? So the first thing is, marketing by its nature is going to be broad-based. You can target market things, but you can't really, pick and choose exactly who you want. You can't go out and say, oh, out of these 100 people, here's the 12 that are going to buy. Let's only focus on them. I mean, that comes over time. What product marketing can do is look at the people in the funnel or the people entering the funnel and try and analyze and understand what's happening with those people, what's causing them to stay in the funnel for a period of time longer than they need to be, what's causing people who aren't going to be buyers at a later stage to remain in the funnel and waste people's time. So the question really becomes, how can I accelerate people through the funnel, removing the barriers that are blocking them from moving forward? And how can I eliminate the people who aren't going to be the buyers in the end, right? And so this takes time, this takes work, this takes insight, but this is something that product marketers can do because guess what? Their focus is the buyer, the buying process, understanding the market needs. Like that's core. So one of the things I suggest is that, a lot of companies will do win-loss analysis, but they'll do it at the very end. At the very end, we won a deal, let's understand why we won, or we lost a deal, let's understand why we lost. Product marketing could do the equivalent of win-loss through the funnel. So as people are coming through the funnel, they can understand what brought them forward. Why did it take? Maybe there's somebody who took half the time as normal to get through the funnel, or somebody else is taking twice as much time to get through the funnel. Figure that out, right? figure out, look at those people who are dropping out, say halfway through the funnel, understand why did they drop out? Were they just poorly suited in the beginning, or did they hit a barrier that they couldn't bypass? And if you can work those things out and you can accelerate the right people through the funnel, guess what? You're going to increase your revenues, because your salespeople will waste less time on bad leads, and the leads they get will be better qualified and more likely to win. And the thing is that if you really do that well, it also becomes a competitive advantage, because guess what? You're competing with, your competitors, and you're going to be doing a better job of getting them through your funnel than they're going through your competitors' funnel.
So let's now look to close this up, Saeed. So any kind of closing thoughts as we bring this together? I want to be conscious of time here. Any final thoughts on the topic?
So I think in a nutshell, I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things, but if I were to summarize everything from a product marketing point of view, it's a battle for mind share, right? You're looking for mind share within your company, so your salespeople and marketing and other people who are dependent on you understand what needs to be done, how they need to interact with their customers, what artifacts and things they can use. It's a battle for mind share with your partners, because again, we talked about that earlier, where they're looking not just at your products and other products, and absolutely, without question, it's a battle for mind share with your prospects and customers. So I think if people keep that in mind and say, okay, how am I going to win that mind share, and how am I doing it, winning that mind share, it becomes a much more focused activity that people can execute on.
Awesome. That's a great summary. Thank you, Saeed. So if people want to follow up with you, learn more about some of these topics, maybe reach out to you, can you share how people can get a hold of you, and also maybe talk about whether this presentation is available anywhere online, because I know you've talked on this topic at product camps and whatnot before.
Yeah, so the best place to reach me, I mean, there's a number of ways. I have a blog called onproductmanagement.net, where it's about 9 years old now. Hard to believe, but been blogging there for about 9 years. Myself and many other people have contributed to it. There's a contact us forum on there, which is probably the simplest way for anyone. On Twitter, I'm not really, I'll be honest, not that active on Twitter, but my Twitter handle is Saeed W. Khan. And I think between those two, that's probably the easiest way to reach me. This presentation is online. I presented at Product Camp Boston earlier this year, but I think people would have to go there and do a little bit of hunting to find it, because they posted a lot of presentations. I'll probably put this up on SlideShare, Alan. Excellent. And share that out, and then maybe you can also sort of we'll figure that one out.
I'll include a link to it once I see that. That's great. So Saeed, thank you. I want to thank you for being a trooper. We've had some technical difficulties on this recording. I appreciate you hanging in there. So thanks for your time, and we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Thank you for having me, Alan. I really appreciate it.
Brought to you by Eigenworks. Eigenworks specializes in win-loss analysis and offer customer development as a service. Get candid feedback to improve your sales approach, uncover competitive intelligence, and help you pivot as needed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Ready Product Radio, part of the Ready PDM network. This is when most podcasters ask you to leave a review on iTunes if you like the show. My only request is, if you found the show entertaining, inspiring, or informative, please share it with a colleague or friend who may feel the same way. Also, note that the views expressed in this episode do not necessarily reflect my views or the views of the Ready PDM network. If you want yourself or your product to be ready, then keep your eyes on your markets, your ears to your customers, your mind on their experiences, both good and bad, and finally, keep your hearts on your products. Until next time, thank you for listening. You can contact us on Twitter at Ready Product Radio. That's RDYPRODUCTRADIO. And on the web at www.readyproductradio.com.
Gee, Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world. You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.